Thanks for tuning in. So, I was going to talk about something else today, but I realized that the topic would have been something that I don't know if anybody would really be interested in it. It was going to be more about my own thoughts, experiences, and feelings about a specific subject, but I decided, well, how about I leave that for now and talk about something else that might be more interesting for other people as well, and something that I was thinking about and that has been on my radar, which is the Moon in Gemini in the natal chart. So I have a friend with Moon in Gemini, and I see with him especially how it plays out, because I think the more that we get to know a person and the more that we get to know about astrology and the more we learn about astrology and start connecting with it in different ways, the more we see how it actually matches up, and to see like, yes, this works, like this seems to correlate. And so it's been fascinating for me to kind of see how the Gemini moon kind of takes shape in him. And I almost wish that I could talk to him about astrology and kind of get him to see the deeper layers of his own experiences and the way that he expresses himself, the positives and the negatives of it. But he completely rejects astrology, so I can't do that really. But the moon in Gemini is someone who can kind of intellectualize their emotions and their feeling states, because they have a need for intellectual data, and so they can turn anything into intellectual data, if that makes sense. So they can talk about feelings in a way that feels detached in like an air sign way. Gemini is an air sign, so they can talk about kind of it's like a structured, like an intellectually structured way that they talk about feelings or emotions. It's not like that they're maybe going deep into it and they're maybe just stirring the waters or something. It's more like they have an experience and they have a need to gather some kind of logical data from it. So they might be analytical emotionally, but they kind of do it in a way where it's a lot of just intellectual mind data that's coming out, and it's interesting to observe. And I have Mars in Gemini, and my friend also has Mars in Gemini as well. So I know from a personal way that the way that some of my Gemini tendencies are kind of more played out through the Mars part of me. But it's always been fascinating to me how the Gemini moon operates, and how I would like to almost be a Gemini moon for a week or a month, and just to kind of see and experience it on a personal level, and on a way that I'm not just trying to understand it in an intellectual way. That's a Gemini word, intellectual. But to actually get inside it and live it myself, so that I can kind of feel what it feels like. Because I think with the moon, I'm going a little bit overboard in terms of, I'm kind of rambling a little bit, but I think the moon is something that we're so used to. It's like our emotional baseline. So we're so used to, navigating our emotional lives in this way. Like, I can't imagine being another moon sign in certain ways. Like, I can't get inside that on a very personal level. The other moon signs, I can't get inside them on a personal level very well. Although I can understand some of the complexity of what they need emotionally, because I'm interested in astrology and I've been, learning about it. But it's difficult sometimes to get inside, I think, especially the moon placements of another person, and kind of imagine how somebody else might feel emotionally in terms of like the moon ways, because the moon is so subjective. And it's not that you don't have empathy or compassion, but it's more like the moon is so, it's like an emotional imprint that is in us. So it's difficult to imagine sometimes how that emotional imprint that is so huge inside me is kind of different in every other person. And I'm going off track again, but like there are certain other people with who also have my moon sign who I feel a sort of a connection with in a way that I don't with other people. So people who have other moon signs, it is more difficult sometimes to have that rapport in a very specific way, in where it's like, yes, like I know what this person is, how this person is navigating these situations. There's a bit less rapport. I think having the same moon sign as somebody else would be a good indicator of probably being able to have rapport with that person, at least in some ways. Maybe particularly if the moons are very close to each other in the synastry chart. So like if my moons are 3 degrees and then another person who has their moon in the same sign at like 4 or 5 degrees or something. Moon in Gemini has a need for versatility and variety. And that is, again, a lot of times in the intellectual realm, but it's also in the emotional realm. So Gemini is an intellectual sign, but if you're combining that with the moon, which is very emotional, you just have a need for a lot of data and information about everything, but also about in one way it's about like your emotions, and trying to explain an emotional situation in an intellectual way. And I see this with my friend a lot. So he's curious about his emotions. He's curious about his like what is going on with him. He has a need to also communicate about moods and emotions and feelings, but he does it in a way that it's less like venting, but it is partly a venting mechanism, but it's also trying to gather data from it and see what other people say and what other people have to contribute to the conversation about the situation. So trying to gather data from other people, and also trying to see what comes up for them when they talk about this. Like, what data can I play with? What data can I use? And a lot of times Gemini Moon people can also have moods that are quite changeable, and they can kind of maybe get emotionally fixated on something, but then move on to something else later, because they have maybe gathered the data that they need to gather from that experience or from that interesting topic, and then they kind of move on. And that's just a Gemini thing in general, but it's interesting when it's with your moon sign, combined with your moon sign. So it's like you have an emotional need on a soul level to have different experiences and intellectualize them. And it's interesting also with my friend that he's quite there's other reasons for this, but one way that I can kind of make the correlation again, it's a lot of times it's about kind of seeing people around you and like the correlation and how something shows up in them, something astrological shows up in them. That one of the ways this moon in Gemini kind of shows up in him is that he is quite what I would consider deadpan, if people still use that word. It's like he's detached. He's detached from any kind of emotional expression in a way where it will be kind of like he doesn't want to be flashy emotionally or something like that. And I think with some Gemini moons, it would be that they would be more open, they would be more chatty about their feelings and emotions maybe. But I think with some moon in Gemini people, one of the ways that it can express itself is that you are actually, because you're so detached and intellectual, you're actually detaching from any kind of like emotional expression, because you're just in your head thinking, and that's like what you have an emotional need for. While you do have a need for versatility and like new experiences and novelty, sometimes the way that Gemini Moon can show up within that is that like, well, the person can have a need for those things, but it doesn't coexist with a need to be flashy or like something like that. Like let's say a Sagittarius moon also needs variety and experience, you know, but they can also be more, it's a fire sign, they can be much more sort of out there and flashy and energetic in their expression. Whereas the Gemini moon, one of the ways that is interesting to observe for me in my Gemini moon friend is that his need for versatility and intellectual stimulation and data gathering and all that is also behind this kind of mask of being detached, and like he's like analyzing everything, and he's feeling things, of course, as well, but it's always like he's collecting data about experience and experiences and collecting maybe on some level, I would say Moon and Gemini people can also collect data about, let's say, their own or other people's states of feeling. So I don't see my friend do this particularly often, but I can kind of curiously think about, well, maybe that is what it is his subjective experience. So Moon is very subjective. So maybe his subjective experience a lot of the time is that he's actually gathering data not only about situations and like people and information and the news and things like that, but also like what is going on in people and what is going on inside himself. Because a lot of times when he expresses about his feelings and emotions and moods, it will be on a very detached, objective, sort of intellectual way. So maybe he is doing a lot of that inner digging in a way that is more about trying to bring up some kind of data in order to kind of break it down and analyze it and kind of collect information. Yeah, I would say that. And Moon and Gemini people, and my friend said that he does have a need for this, is that sometimes they have a need, like emotional need in daily life to kind of verbalize, let's say when they're choosing between 2 or 3 options, they might have a need to really, more than other people, they might have a need to verbalize and kind of talk it out with the other person, or like they might just be more so trying to gather information again, and so they're not really necessarily expecting a response from you, but they just need to verbalize things so that it will be easier for them to make a decision. And my friend specifically said that he does this, and I found that interesting because I had just observed him doing that, and then he said that he does have a need to do that, and I thought that was interesting because I knew that he has a Gemini moon, and so I was like, okay, his Gemini moon is being expressed in this way right now. It's like he needs to verbalize and get it out in a verbal way, so that the data would become clearer to him. And maybe he can get some information from other people as well, like myself or whoever he's talking to. Yeah, a few thoughts about the moon in Gemini. If you want more from me, do subscribe and leave a like if you like this, and leave a comment if you have any experiences or opinions about moon in Gemini. Yeah, thank you for watching.